record of this? Excellent. And why do we hit the record, Kathy?
Well, because life happens and you might miss this session or you might miss another session, and so we record it and you can tune in later on. It's usually uploaded within a couple of hours if all the technology works nice, following the live session each time, and I'll show you where to find that shortly.
Great. And it's also sometimes people do like to watch back a little bit of a session and see how something was done or the different comments. Well, yeah, welcome everybody to the Safe System Assessment course. And I'll take this opportunity to acknowledge the many different traditional owners and custodians of the many lands where the training is being run, because it's all across New Zealand, and it's wonderful. Okay, let's jump on to hopefully a new slide. Oh, I've jumped into 2 slides there. So we do show some road crash scenes. We don't show anything graphic, but just flagging now that if that's something that could disturb you, just be prepared that we do that in trying to analyse how we can prevent crashes and prevent the severity of crashes in the future. As I say, nothing too graphic. And who are you, Kathy?
Yeah, good question, Ken. I'm the training manager here at Safe System Solutions and all things in the background. So I will be your moderator for the session. You've received just some emails from me and in the background with the learning management system as well. So do get in touch if you can't make a session, if you have any technical issues, any admin questions, logistical things. And what we'd like you to do is during the session is don't wait for a pause to ask questions throughout. And the best way to do that is via the chat function, which some of you have already had a go at this morning. You can also use the Q&A function if you'd like to ask a question anonymously, and I'll be monitoring both of those in the background. And then as we pause throughout the session, I'll send those questions through to Ken and he'll be able to answer them. If you would like to have a chat and listen to your voice as well, you can raise your hand and you can ask a question verbally, and I'll just unmute you in that process. If anything fails, if you can't hear or there's no screen or anything like that, probably the best thing to do is turn it off and turn it back on again. That's your IT 101 there. So shut it down and restart, and usually that fixes most problems. Otherwise, you can dial in on the phone if you're having poor connectivity issues.
Good, thanks, Kathy. And yeah, just reiterate there, pop your questions into the chat as you're thinking of them. And yeah, it's nice to do the little drop down and have it to everybody so everybody can see the questions being asked and discussion going on in the background there. We use this webinar version of Zoom rather than the normal meeting one, just to minimize the dogs barking in the background and people forgetting to unmute and all of that chaos. So hopefully it doesn't disrupt you too much in terms of the way you're getting involved in the session. And this is me, Ken Beer. I'm the principal engineer at Safe System Solutions and formerly worked for Vic Roads, the Victorian Road Authority, for a long time, and do a fair bit of varied work for New Zealand or in New Zealand for Waka Kotahi, and a little bit for Auckland Transport in the past around sort of varied specialised road safety topics and the like. And yeah, in more recent times, been running a lot of the technical training, which has been wonderful to see a lot of the work happening in New Zealand. There's a QR code to my LinkedIn. I like that as a little platform to continue the exchange of information. We put out a lot of little safe system snippets, we call them, and share those. And I put out bits and pieces to try to, I mean, it's an ongoing learning exercise, road safety and well, pretty much life, isn't it, really? So lots to learn there. So that'll be in the bottom corner if you of the next few slides, at least, if you want to connect with me and we can continue chatting. Also, my contact details there, because throughout the course, if you want to talk about any of the technical information, or even after the course, if you want to bounce ideas or ask whether I know anybody who's, I don't know, done a fatigue study or done this or that, I'm sure I can point you, well, I'm likely to be able to point you in the right direction. I've been kicking around the road safety space for a long time now. Back to you, Kathy, to explain what this LMS is.
Terrific. Thank you, Ken. You have been kicking around for a long time, haven't you? All right. So the learning management system, which so many of you have jumped on and said kia ora to us all, which is great. And it is where we house everything. So the presentations, the recordings, all the resources, all the bits and pieces. And it is also where we'll ask you to do a quiz at the end of every webinar. So there's a short sort of 10 question multiple choice style quiz that we'll ask you to do. A couple of assignments, not as intense as the road safety audit program for those of you that have maybe recently done that one, a little bit lighter on this one. And yeah, so that's that side of things. Now, we did have a domain name change, which stuffed us about a little bit. So I know a couple of people have been in touch about not being able to log in. I'll just reset your password. So anything like that, get in touch with me if you're having any dramas there. But basically, all the information is there in this particular program.
Thanks, Kathy. And yeah, you have to get in there in order to successfully complete this course. So get in now. Now, we have a couple of little interactive elements to this to try to ensure that you're engaged in this online format. One of them is our friend Wally the Wombat. And Wally appears a random number of times in the slides, in different parts of the slides. And your job is to count the number of times you see Wally the Wombat. And that'll be one of the quiz questions. So that's just to try to ensure that you're not doing that roundabout design on the side or the like. But this is not one of the official Wallies in the Wally count. So your Wally count's 0 at the moment. That was just an example Wally. But yeah, keep an eye out for Wally the Wombat. And also, we do give out prizes still. So some of you have been to our in-person courses when I was to run them in New Zealand. But how do we give out prizes? Well, why do we give out prizes is because you ask good questions or you answer the questions when I ask via the chat. You're the sort of first one to answer correctly if it's a correct or incorrect question, or you give a good answer, volunteer for case studies and the like. We also do, Kathy has super trivia going on before each session in the few minutes before each session. It's always fun to see what random questions Kathy comes up with, sometimes road safety, sometimes just general knowledge. And so if you log in a few minutes early to before the session, you're a chance to win a prize as well. That's to incentivize you to get in on time. And how do we get the prizes to them, Kathy?
Magic post. I keep track. Ken gives away a lot of prizes sometimes. So yeah, it keeps me busy here in the background. And it'll come to you at the end. So, so not magically like in a couple of hours, but at the end of the program, along with your copy, a hard copy of your certificate and any prizes you've won will appear at the end of the program. Fantastic.
We do set a competency benchmark, or we've got some requirements and then a competency benchmark for this course. And yeah, there is a bit of work to do in this course to successfully complete it, so we don't shy away from that. So first thing is to attend 4 of the 5 live webinars. We'd love you to attend all 5 live so you can interact, ask your questions, get involved. But you've got to then view that one that you miss if you need to. Now, if life gets really chaotic, then you can't make 4 of them, get in contact with Kathy and have a chat about that. Satisfactory completion of all the set tasks, so you need to complete them. And the competency benchmark is an 80% pass mark on the quizzes, which are generally sort of multiple choice style ones. But then the assignments you do, which are actually marked by myself or one of our senior engineers or senior safe system assessors, and you'll get feedback if you haven't quite met that benchmark, and then we have one-on-one coaching available as well. So if you're really struggling, you just need to get in contact. We'll book a time, and we will we'll talk things through with you. We'll assist, we'll guide you, we'll re-explain things, point you at bits of documentation, because really for us it's about ensuring that you all get above that 80% pass mark, and some of you will probably find that quite easy to do, and some of you may not. That's okay, because we will work with you to get your knowledge up to that point. Okay, anything in the admin, management, logistics side of things, Kathy, that we need to cover before I jump into some content?
John's just pointing out that I am in the prize pick, so I do just grab a prize like that, and then it appears. There's a tape measure.
A tape measure, that's a good prize.
It is a good prize, isn't it? It's very handy.
It'd be great if we could somehow get that to 3D print at people's desks while the session was going on.
One day, Ken, one day we'll do it.
One day, okay. So get involved in the chat, and make sure, you do ask questions, make your comments, because Kathy will feed those through to me as we go. We will take a very short break during the session, just so you can have a stretch and fill your coffee up and the like. But I'm going to jump into some content. We do have a fair bit to cover today, and Kathy will alert me if my internet slows down, but please type that into the chat if you're noticing issues as well, and we'll go from there. But we are here for the Safe System Assessment course, and I suppose this first module is kind of broad, and we do, I suppose, recover some of the safe system fundamentals, which many of you are very knowledgeable on. I put a slightly different lens sometimes on them, but that's really coming about because of getting you set up to do a safe system assessment. And so that's what it's all about, ensuring that your fundamental knowledge of safe system aligns with the ability to do a safe system assessment. Well, we'll get into that. So this first module, we are going to look at principles and elements of the safe system. We will delve further into kinetic energy thresholds of different crash types. We'll talk about the difference between traditional approaches to road safety and the safe system. We'll cite best practice for behavioural change and vehicle safety interventions, because safe system assessments are a broader, wider assessment methodology, not just the physical infrastructure, but some of these wider elements of the safe system. And we will have a look into speed and why it's such a critical element of the safe system. Now, there's a Wally. I'm going to give you some assistance on this one. That is what you're looking for. So your Wally count is 1. No more help from me, though, throughout the course. Keep an eye out for Wally. Now, many of you know your Road to Zero document, New Zealand's Road Safety Strategy 2020 to 2030. And it's a really good document. It's been well thought through. It's certainly got some world-leading stuff in there. And I'm not going to go through it. That's not the point of this course. But I did want to pull out just a couple of things in the KPI section of this, which I've got a few things relevant to this course. Well, so KPIs are associated with this document. Percentage of people who have completed an approved safe system training course and showed improved understanding of the safe system. So that's a wonderful start, considering this course does that. It is the approved course, or is an approved course. But the next one is interesting, where it talks about the percentage of road infrastructure projects that have been subject to a road safety audit and or safe system assessment. Because I'm tipping quite a few of you are very familiar with road safety auditing. Some of you are road safety auditors. and do road safety audits. Some of you commission road safety audits. Safe system assessments are a newer methodology for assessing road safety and alignment with safe system principles. And there is some overlap between the safe system assessments and road safety audits, certainly, but they are different things and they have different purposes and they produce different results. It's one of the, I suppose, most common questions or misunderstandings of a safe system assessment is that it is just a road safety audit rebranded. And that is certainly not the case. As I say, they're trying to achieve the same sort of end objective of reducing death and serious injury. However, they go about it very different ways. They produce very different outputs and they're used for different purposes. So the safe system has been around for quite a while. And Kathy, actually, let's give out one of those prizes from the prize pit. The safe system as a philosophy that the New Zealand government committed to at a national level. Pop into the chat a guess at what year New Zealand committed to this idea and the philosophy of the safe system as the way you will address road trauma. Just have a guess. You don't lose any points for getting it wrong. And in fact, throughout every session, anything you do in the actual live session is not marked. So don't worry about that. It's only after the session you get marked. So I can see some things coming into the chat. Great.
Well, I see all the years coming into the chat. Not quite the one we're after. Almost there. Just keep typing years into the chat. More than one guess allowed.
Started the 1800s and work your way up.
Not quite that far back. Oh, goodness. We are so close. I'm going to have to give it to the closest without going over. Oh. I'm going to give it to Daisy.
Oh, Daisy. Okay. What did Daisy say?
2002.
Okay. Well, I think, yes. So without going over is the
Closest
key there.
without
I think
going over.
Daryl was 2005. It was 2004 was sort of the time that New Zealand had committed to that. So the idea of the safe system has been around for a while. It's not a new concept. It's just taken quite a while for it to, I suppose, gain as much traction as it's getting these days. And this is not safe system assessments that I'm talking about. This is the philosophy of the safe system. And safe system assessments are just our way to look at things and try to understand how well they align with this philosophy. But let's just remind ourselves of the philosophy. But I'm going to do that in a slightly different way. I'm going to take you back to 2004. And this diagram in 2004 was sort of what was being thrown around Australia and New Zealand in as the safe system. And interestingly, well, before it got released as a diagram that looked like that, it was just the things inside the circle. So in the middle, we had human tolerance to physical force, which is a very interesting, I suppose, starting point for anything associated with the road transport system, to look at biomechanics and physics rather than anything else. But that was acknowledged as the central point of the system. Then you saw around that there was speed, vehicles, roads and roadsides, and that was it. The circle was drawn around that. And then at a sort of Austroads level, and New Zealanders definitely in the room, people like Colin Brodie and Fergus Tate and others are, floating around in these discussions. There was these sort of two camps that divided when this circle was drawn, because one camp said, hey, you've forgotten the road users, like the people driving, the people walking, the people riding. Like, surely they have to be something that we've got to get safer. And then there was the other camp who was saying, well, no, we are going to try to create this system that does not require the user of the system to always be alert and compliant and doing the right thing all the time. We're going to try and get them to do that, but these are humans; they're going to fail. So we should have our system that caters for those mistakes and those failures. And anyway, the debate raged. Anyway, that square was drawn around the diagram, and then this sort of alert and compliant road users sort of put there as this outer square. And that was, to a degree, a bit of a failure in meeting sort of safe system philosophy, which originated a lot of the thinking in Europe and came over and was adapted to the Australian and New Zealand context. But fundamentally, that gives this amazing get out of responsibility clause for anybody involved in the management, the operation, the design of the system, because it gives this ability just to say, well, they weren't alert, they weren't compliant, so what can we do about it? They have to have their responsibility. And yeah, it becomes a really interesting dilemma. I'll talk more about this. But anyway, so that diagram, and then there were little bits added to it, adding bits and pieces. And then after a while, people refined it and debated it, and it sort of came over to all these types of diagrams started emerging, different ones that you will no doubt recognize. I think that was one New Zealand one a while back, and now you're running it in with this one. And I think this one's starting to come a really nicely, elegantly designed and crafted and well thought through representation of safe system principles and the safe system philosophy. And it's actually one I do send around to a lot of jurisdictions when working with them because it's got some really well designed and thought through elements. And I'm not going to go through this in a lot of detail because the purpose of this course is really to look at how we apply all of this on the ground rather than keep our heads in the sort of philosophical space. But the central point there is that vision, a New Zealand where no one is killed or seriously injured in road crashes. And the crafty bit of wording in there is the fact that it doesn't say a New Zealand where there are no road crashes. And it's important to sort of get your head around that. We are going to do everything we can to stop crashes happening. However, they're still going to happen. And so we need to then look at those crashes and try to manage them to survivable crashes. And so by that statement, it is an acknowledgement that mistakes are going to happen and people are going to still be involved in incidents. It's just those incidents will be managed in a way that people will be able to survive that. Now, there are the principles around the outside. I've put those over on the right as well there just to reinforce that. We strengthen all parts of the road transport system. So it's saying, this is not just one, it's not just the roads or the vehicles or the workplace or the like that's going to get us to our objectives. It's going to be a holistic system. We're designed for human vulnerability. And this is probably in my career been the biggest change. And that is that we are now operating in a space where human vulnerability and human biomechanics are a design element. They're a design factor. The same way you look at lighting design, pavement design, drainage design, you look at human biomechanics design in your design. It's actually a design parameter. And so people really need to start to get their head around that in a really comprehensive way. And safe system assessments are one of the ways we can really start to bring that home. We have a shared responsibility, and it's saying that's in there not to void the road managers of responsibility and push it to the road user. It's actually more the other way around, because we have had a long tradition of putting all responsibility to the road user themselves and saying, well, you have the ultimate responsibility for your safety. It's dangerous, and you have to look after yourself. And then legislation is often written around that, where it ends up sort of blaming the individual for incidents out there when there is an inherently unsafe system that they're operating in. Actions are grounded in evidence and evaluated. And what a wonderful statement, especially in the road safety space, because you will know this, I'm sure, as well as any, but in road safety, everybody has an opinion. And often those opinions are very strong in terms of what will work and what will not work. And they often come about from people's many years driving, walking, or riding around the road network. And they, from that, have a sense that they know what will work and what won't work, because it's worked for them or it hasn't worked for them. Yes, but obviously they are not a representative sample. They're one person, and their experiences is not evidence. And it is simply their experience. Now, we don't discount that. We're always open to listening to people's thoughts and experiences and the like. But you must make decisions based on evidence and evaluation reports and comprehensive looks at this. And it's very hard also to remove some of your own personal experience and look at what the evidence is also saying, because we do really need to be evidence-based. So our road safety actions support health, well-being, and livable places. This is really smart to put into a road safety strategy, because coattailing on these sorts of elements can be a wonderful way for us to achieve significant reductions in road trauma, and they're very palatable to most people in ways of doing it. Is that they play out mostly in urban settings, but it's a really good way to achieve road safety, because it's not going to be done just as road safety initiatives. We can move that through many other initiatives, and you can add it, environmental stuff, climate change.
Ken, I think we lost you there, which maybe you don't know because you're lost. Or maybe I just lost you there. It'd be great to get some feedback from the chat if other people have also lost Ken. Yeah, everybody's lost him. Okay. Yeah, yep. Oh, okay. I think we've definitely lost him. That was fun. I'll get him, I'll just send him a message, because he might be going on and on and on, and that won't be the word is he certainly is lost. There you go. He's okay. So what he'll do is well, we don't know if he's in Bendigo. That's what he's telling us. What we'll do instead is I'll run through very quickly the learning management system with you. So this was always the backup plan, and so you know what to do at the end of the session, and I can run that through with you now. Sorry about that sudden pause there. I think he's just trying to keep me on my toes, make sure I'm not having a little snooze here in the background. Okay, so hopefully you can see my screen. Maybe just a quick little, just alert me that you can see my screen. See the comments. Hey, okay, great. Thank you. All right. So what we've got here is, thanks everyone. What we've got here is you're enrolled in the New Zealand July program. And so many of you have jumped on and said hello there. You've hopefully watched the pre-course content video, and you have also completed the learning module from Waka Kotahi. Very nice and easy. Now, a couple of things you may have noticed already. We've got a whole bunch of resources here that we'll refer you to throughout the program. So there's a number of reference documents in here, and you're just so you know, you're looking at my version here, not the student version. So yours probably just doesn't let you edit too much. The Safe System Assessment fact sheets that Ken will talk about. And if you would like to share any resources with the rest of the group, you can do that in here. So you can add things in there. Now we're in module 1 at the moment, and so a copy of the presentation is here. So when Ken disappears and it'll you can't see anything, or if you would like to follow along or maybe have a preview for the next session and that sort of thing, you can do that. We do have the videos that he shows and some other videos in here as well, because we've factored in for the technology failing. And then at the end of each session, talked about that quiz, and there is the quiz there. And so you just jump in and you've got 3 attempts allowed, and it's just a 10-question multiple choice style thing, and you attempt that quiz and submit it in there. That's where you'll be asked about the how many wallies, which you've probably been keeping track of up until now. So there's some other resources that Ken might talk about throughout the session that are in there as well. So that sets you up for what you need to do at the end of each session. To give you a sneak preview of the next session, there will be a short assignment, and so where that will look like this. And there's Ken back. So what we have is a little assignment, which Ken will run through at the end of next session, but basically this is where that's housed and how you go in and do that. So we'll open that up, and then you can submit that at the end of that session. Now, one more thing I'll just run through is at the end of every session, this is where the recordings will be as well, and you get to see this exciting bit of failure. And so what I do is load the recording in here. And so it'll say webinar 2 recording. And so that's where you can jump in and have another look at that. Hello, Ken, you're back.
Hello.
I wonder how long you spoke before you realised. Were you just going on and on and on? And
I was, yes, chatting away to myself. No, I got the blue screen of death appear on my computer. So these are the joys, aren't they, of online training.
All right, well, everybody's good to do their quiz at the end of every session, so that's great. And are you able to bring up your presentation, or do you want me to do that?
Just working on bringing that back up. So yeah, that was that's fine. We just took some of the stuff from the end of the session and pulled it back forward. So I was just finishing off talking about the safe system principles, wasn't I there, Kathy? I hope you heard that. Did you?
Yes, we did. You were here.
Sorry, I'm on another screen at the moment.
Okay, good.
Oh, wow. Okay, I see where we. Okay. Sorry, bear with me. So people ready to do their quiz?
Absolutely.
Wonderful. Okay. So if I just now reclaim this.
Mm-hmm.
And go back to here. Is that about where we were?
It's coming. There it is. Great.
Mm-hmm. Okay. So I'll continue on, and hopefully that lasts for a little bit longer this time. I was just saying we promote good choices but plan for mistakes, which is that understanding of human fallibility. It's not to say we can't do better as humans in the road using task. It's just understanding our limitations as humans. Now, let me just jump out of the road space and jump into another industry, just to look at safety culture very briefly. And if we look at widget production, like manufacturing something, making something, we saw back in the day there was a very pathological safety culture there, where it was a dangerous environment. People were told it was dangerous. They were given some training on how to, use the machines or clean the machines or do their tasks. But they were just told, you have a responsibility to protect yourself. And that's what we refer to generally as a pathological safety culture in any sort of industry or any environment, where there is a dangerous system and its end responsibility is pushed to the individual. You elevate from that to a reactive safety culture. And that's where in the widget production environment, that the machines that keep killing people, crushing people, ripping arms off and the like are identified and the guards put on it, or a changed process is put in place. So it's a reactive safety culture. Then it elevates to this calculating safety culture. And that's where the economists get involved. And they start to say proactively, well, if we invested, well, sort of proactively and reactively, but if we invested £30,000 in upgrades, there's pounds back in these days, in upgrades to safety of these machines and these areas and the loading docks and the like, we will actually see £90,000 in return in terms of increased widget production and less payouts to these families of crushed workers and the like. And back then we said, we've come up with this thing called a benefit cost ratio, and you get a benefit cost ratio of 3. So every pound you invest, you get £3 in return for doing these safety improvements. And that's what we call a calculating safety culture. But where we are moving to in the safe system safety culture is this proactive. And that's where you have to have a very high level of safety, and you can produce widgets up to whatever amount you can within that safety envelope. So the safety sets the precondition for widget production. And then you heavily need to invest in maintaining that safety culture. And that's not just maintaining machines like that and infrastructure, that's maintaining the actual culture itself. So you've no doubt already sort of aligned this to the road environment and road transport and thinking about that. And where do we sit? Well, we kind of straddle a few of these. We have very pathological elements to our road transport system where we know it's dangerous. We issue licenses to young people and we tell them it's their responsibility to be safe out there. And they have a responsibility, but we are pushing them out into a highly dangerous situation. We do a lot of reactive stuff, addressing particular areas where crashes have occurred, death and serious injury have occurred. We calculate a lot. BCRs are very prevalent, and we do some exciting proactive stuff. And we're seeing some more emergence of proactive, and we want to see a lot more of that, where we're not waiting for crashes to happen. We understand risk, we understand biomechanics, we understand where crashes will occur in the future. We understand systemic risk, and we try to address that and then continue to try to maintain that culture and the infrastructure. I suppose just quickly, a really good example in my mind that's been around quite a long time now of proactive safety culture are school speed zones. And I think they're a good example that we have that ability to be in that proactive space. We don't we don't push all responsibility to the kids and say, well, there's the 70 km/h road and you've got to, cross it and cross here and look both ways and make sure, you don't do that and off you go. I mean, we still give them that information and we try to, make them as safe as we can, but realizing that mistakes will be made. We're not reactive. We don't just put school speed zones where there's been enough kids killed. And we are not calculating at all on that, because if you actually go to a standard economic evaluation of school speed zones, they are a disastrous investment from the stock standard New Zealand economic models for road transport investment. I mean, if you followed that, you would rip school speed zones out left, right, and centre because just of the way that you calculate things, and it's too much in that reactive reactive economic evaluation, utilizing deaths and serious injuries to a dollar figure and equating it that way. So there just aren't enough kids killed. But that's so grotesque to say it like that, isn't it? So it really lends us to understanding what a safe system sort of lens on the culture is, at least that we proactively do that. We all, say, right, that's something that we as a community want to do because protection of human life is paramount, and people generally accept it. There's a little bit of grumbling about times and this and that, but in general, it's a very well supported thing. Just and that's utilising kids because kids hold a special place in road safety and in a whole lot of other things. But that sort of philosophy of thinking about safety is where we'd like to go with a whole lot more areas. I think it's time for a little quiz, Kathy, a little poll. Remember, people aren't being marked on this, but I wonder if we do have any polls loaded, or am I just going to ask it? People can type in. Oh no, look at that. It should have popped up on your screen, hopefully. Now, I've gone with these sort of generic key principles, and they're not exactly the ones that worded in exactly the same way as we talked about in the New Zealand one, but it's a good discussion point. And the second question, I haven't talked about at all, unless you've come to some of my other courses, the road safety audit course. I actually use it in a variety of courses, barrier design and a few other things. But have a go at those two questions. You're not being marked on them. We'll give you a minute. You can have a stretch as well if you want. We might have we do have a bit longer break coming shortly. I don't want to spend too long on this, but let you have a look at that.
Will the next break be when you get the blue screen of death again, Ken? I reckon we should schedule it in for there. It's a good time.
Yeah. Wonder why we got the. I'll have to talk to our lovely IT person as to that one, because I don't think it was an internet issue.
Bonus.
Lots of answers coming in. Thank you to those doing that. We're going to stop it shortly. Okay, 3 more seconds. Make your last guesses. 3, 2, 1. You're not being marked on this. Okay, Kathy, you can end that one. Let's share the results just for a quick look. Which of the following is not a key principle of the SAFE system? And I sort of used some slightly different wording to see if you were on sort of in tune there. And most of you are. So the idea of aiming for no mistakes on the road network and elimination of mistake making on the road network, we've realised and come to understand is not a possibility while humans have any involvement in the system. We will aim to minimise and manage, but we're not going for absolute elimination of mistakes because of the impossibility of that with humans involved in it. We are, though, aiming for no death and serious injury. It will be it's a long-term aspiration. However, we are sort of aiming for that. Now, let's go down to the next one. Usain Bolt. Why are we asking about Usain Bolt in a road safety course? What speed was he traveling when he ran that world record 100-meter sprint? And 14 of you are correct in the 44 kilometers per hour. Some of you probably did a little bit of back of envelope meters a second calculations, converting to kilometers an hour. Did you take into account the time to accelerate as well? I'm not sure you did. 44 kilometers an hour. What an interesting random question to ask. Why am I asking that? Well, I would like you to imagine that we park a Toyota Camry at the end of Usain Bolt's lane, and he comes running down there at 44 kilometers an hour, and bang, he slams into that. Will he survive? Well, the answer is generally yes, he will survive that. He is built very strongly and he will withstand a lot of force. Us mere mortals may not survive that. But there is a general correlation between your running speed, maximum running speed, and your ability to withstand physical force running to solid objects. That's how we evolved, essentially. So it gives you an indication of biomechanics of the human body and our tolerance for that. If we planted a big gum tree or a big pine tree or something at the end of Usain Bolt's lane and he ran to that, he would no doubt hurt himself, but odds on recover to lead a normal, healthy life. You're welcome to put that experiment into action after the session if you'd like to run into something at your full pace and prove that you will hurt yourself, but you odds on should recover to lead a normal, healthy life. But we are obviously in a situation where we travel much faster than that. But we travel faster than that. Things travel at us faster than that. And we need to have a bit of understanding of this if we want to manage energies into withstandable forces in the road network and utilize biomechanics of injury as a design parameter in our decision making around the design and operation of the road network. So what are some of those sort of forces and speeds that we can handle? And you can see here a diagram of collision speed down the bottom. So that's the speed of impact. That is not the speed limit. Take that out of your mind for now. We're talking about the actual just physics of this. So we've got a collision speed, and over here we've got the chance that collision will result in death to any member of our community. So this is based on whole population, and this is for a vehicle striking a pedestrian. And so we'll have old people in this. We'll have Usain Bolt type people. We'll have young people and everything like that. But you see there around that sort of 30 kilometer per hour mark is where things start to go really bad really quickly. Small increases after that become really quite bad. Usain Bolt sort of up the curve because of his stature, his strength and the like, and his ability to withstand force, but we have that whole population there. We have this information for other crash types, though, not just cars hitting pedestrians and cyclists and the like. We have it for others. Oh, of course, I don't know if this will stream, but just showing you the forces we are designed to handle. He broke a couple of ribs, but he came back and won the gold medal the next year. So, very recoverable and survivable. It's what we're designed for. You can tell me later if that's streamed or not. You actually saw it. Okay, so we have this for different crash types. And this, as I said, is a critical parameter for us in our thinking. We have this for right angle crashes. And this is where we have the speed of the bullet vehicle. And we call that the bullet vehicle in road safety. It's the vehicle that does the damage. It does this striking. This would be the target vehicle in a crash scenario down here. This is target vehicle. So bullet vehicle speed down the bottom, the collision speed, and target vehicle being the occupant of the target vehicle being the one that will be killed, and a driver side strike there or a passenger side. And what we see there is the really critical sort of point of kick up exponential point is around that 50 kilometers per hour for bullet vehicle speed. And we have this for head-on crashes as well. And the critical point in the head-on crashes is around the 70 kilometers per hour, which is 70 kilometers for each vehicle, the speed of each vehicle. So you'd have a closing speed, I suppose, in that scenario of 140 kilometers an hour. But the actual crash forces on the occupant is a 70 kilometer per hour crash because they, assuming same weight vehicle, same mass vehicle, same speed and a sort of direct strike, the vehicle occupant goes from 70 kilometers per hour down to zero very quickly, and that's where the damage is done. It's the equivalent of running into a brick wall at 70 kilometers per hour. So people question that, the physics of that, have in past courses. So I did discover a Mythbusters episode where they did exactly that. They crashed cars into each other and then into brick walls and put accelerometers into the vehicles, as they do in wonderfully spectacular fashion. And those are, so we could probably dig that out, or at least you could Google that and find it, no doubt. So that becomes interesting. We're starting to build an understanding of crashes, forces, speeds, and these are becoming important parameters in our thinking. And of course, there are a huge number of crashes that can happen out there on the road network. So we just showed 3. This diagram we've produced, and I was doing the update to the Austroads Guide to Road Safety, Part 6, which is road safety audit, actually, and I popped this, or a variation of this diagram in there, because I think it's important that we start to get our head around this. But we've started to do crash types, crash speed, and then a bit of a scale to show you the severity levels we're expecting from that crash type with different vehicles and the speeds. Now, in a safe system assessment, and we'll get to this in the 3rd module or so when we start to really unpack this, you need to score the severity of a crash that you are predicting. So you've got to be able to look at an area or a design, predict a crash that will happen, think about the vehicles involved, the road users involved, the speeds that it might happen, the angles that it'll happen at, and then you need to score it between 0 and 4. And this is a bit of a guidance sheet for you to help you do that. So we will come back to this. We'll use it a lot. But I just want to show you a couple of things. That one is that it's a spectrum. It's not a very hard to find line. We've tried to blur these because there is a blur in them. We know generally a crash, at 80 kilometers, well, I'll go a bit closer, 60 kilometers per hour, a pole, if somebody side impacts into a pole, we know it's going to be very bad. It's, potentially most likely death, serious injury, but there will be occurrences where it's outside those parameters. So that's in there. That's a really important reference slide. To pass this course, you're really going to need to be using this and thinking about this and understanding that crashes and forces and the outcomes to human are so critical in a safe system assessment. Kathy, any questions for me at this stage before I jump onto this one?
No, we had a calculation. Momentum equals weight times speed change. Human weight is less than a vehicle's weight, I think. I'm not good with my calculations.
Okay, I know, I think I know where that might be going, and it's talking about the difference between a car hitting you and you hitting a car, which is a fair, okay, yes, the specifics of the physics, and my analogy is there to give a, an image of this sort of stuff in something people can relate to. There is slight physics specifics of it. So well done. Give that person a prize for being a physicist in their spare time, or maybe that is their profession. Yeah. Okay, so this diagram, has been around in road safety for a while, and it's the bane of my existence. I really just want to get rid of it. And the reason I want to get rid of it is not because it's wrong, and it's not because it's based on bad research or anything like that. It's wonderful research, and they've done an exceptional job. But what it is one of the just thousands of crash causation studies that has been done. This one happened to be a 2003 one where they were doing drivers specifically, but they're looking at what are the root causes of crashes. We do that often. Root cause analysis is very important in a lot of things. And so what they do is they analyze, okay, the drivers, the vehicles, the roads, and what played a role in it. Why, what was the initial thing? And they've been doing, as I say, there's thousands of these out there, and they all come out showing that the road user error is the dominant cause of crashes on the road. This one came out, I think, at 93% driver error. Remember, it's just drivers. You can do it for, others have been done for, other crashes, road users, pedestrians as well. Vehicles, a very small amount, vehicle malfunction and the like. Roads, there's a bit more in there, and there's a lot of overlap between these. But every time, 90%, 95% of the issue is road user. The reason I despise this diagram is because of then how it's used. And we get all these people new to road safety, they come in, they discover this research, it's wonderful research, and they say, well, okay, well, we know what the issue is. Now let's fix that issue. Let's change the driver. That is the hardest thing to change. And you're basically going to have to genetically engineer humans to really make significant dents in this. We can do things that take a lot of time, a lot of change, and we get some benefit out of it. But it always, the last 50 years of these studies have all shown the same thing. It just keeps coming out with different investments. What we need to do is rethink of that and say, yes, okay, we know road user error is the dominant root cause. However, the solution to that can be system changes around that, because that's part of being human. So yes, it might be alterations to the way humans use the system in one way or another, but it could be changes to the systems around it, detection devices, and the systemic change. This is an ostrich diagram that I've now taken out of the Compendium of Safe System Knowledge, but and they put, interestingly, driver excess and driver inexperience outside the system. I put those inside the system. Yeah, theirs was coming at a way that we can look at rectifying areas of the system and interventions that we can provide. And those, I do agree, get looked at very differently in our intervention and our countermeasures and the way we address those. However, to me, that is a system failure. If a driver goes 200 kilometers an hour the wrong way down a motorway, and our system has failed to let in the fact that has been able to happen. The vehicle should have intervened. The infrastructure has been set up in a way that's very hard or impossible to happen. That driver potentially shouldn't have been in the system at all in the first place. There's many layers of ways that we can intervene there, rather than just saying that they shouldn't do that. And we should change the humans so that's not their way of doing it. I do agree we can get a lot of benefit out of that. But anyway, I won't dwell on this. I mean, this is one for us to, when I'm in New Zealand shortly, which I'm excited to be back for good periods of time again. We will sit down for a coffee and a long chat about this sort of stuff, because it's a very philosophical thing. And I suppose one final point on this, in this error in the transport system, is that we get very caught up in things below this line, the deliberate violators, and that 200 kilometers an hour down the wrong way of the motorway is a very clear deliberate violation. And what we lose track of, for one reason or other, is above the line error. Slips, lapses, mistakes, unintentional violations. These are sort of your behavioral psychology sort of standard go-tos in human error. We actually see that around 70% of road trauma sits above this line. Deaths and serious injuries. So the bulk of our trauma are not people doing these deliberate violating acts. The news loves absolutely loves, the media loves a deliberate violator because it's such a juicy story. And as a result of that, it filters into the public realm that is, the overwhelming bulk of our death and serious injury are these boy racer style drivers or ice addicts doing these incredibly bad things. And there is a portion of that, about 30%. But the bulk of our trauma are generally people trying to go about their usual business and making human style mistakes. Okay, let's have that little stretch break. But while we do it, I'm going to get you to do a little exercise. And it's just trying to solidify some of the thinking that you already know and some things I've just mentioned then. But it's talking about our traditional approach to road safety, how we've been thinking about road safety for sort of maybe 50 years, and then how we're starting to think about it. And we've been doing so over the last 10 years, and we're going to continue into the future under this safe system approach. And you can see there, it's just going to be a little thing where you're going to connect traditional approaches to road safety to the safe system approach, where we've gone from, say, victim blaming to another way of thinking of it. Now, some of these could go to multiple places, so don't get too caught up on that. But we do have this as a little poll, which hopefully will come up on screen at some point. Good. So you're not being marked on it, so just use it as an opportunity to have a ponder about this. Have a stretch. We'll have 3 or 4 minutes. Pop your answers in, have a go at it. Traditionally, it's victim blaming, safe system equals, pick one of those, and we'll get back into it shortly. Okay, let's have a quick look at this. I'm not going to spend long on it. Thank you for your input. As I say, a few of these could go to different places, so don't be too concerned if you maybe went another one. Let's actually, I'll stop sharing that, or maybe Kathy, you can stop sharing that, and I'll do that on the screen because it'll be easier to follow. This was again taken from some Ostrode's work, so don't get too stressed. So the idea of victim blaming, we don't want to be doing that anymore, sort of looking for blame and then just sort of saying, well, they need, people need to not fall asleep when they drive or the like. We know looking at recognizing error, minimizing its consequence, and then having a more shared responsibility way of thinking about those issues. Emphasis on road user education and compliance is not to say we will ignore that. It's that effort to create that forgiving system is becoming more of a focus. We will continue to work on getting more out of the road user, but its limitations are there. So that one really could have gone to a few of those. So the idea of crash reduction, to that enhanced focus on consequence, especially severe injury minimization, that goes back to sort of what I said earlier on, is that it's not trying to eliminate all crashes. I mean, we would love to do that, but we just know that that human error is part of what happens. So thinking about the physics of that. So this idea of 4 pillars, action independently of roads and speeds and vehicles and people. Well, no, we're into a multifaceted system with interacting elements optimized jointly as an interaction. That's quite a mouthful of a statement. But it does indicate that these are not silos. They're not isolated things operating in their own entity. This is quite a system we're working with. And mobility safety balance, so getting that trade-off where, you kill an acceptable number of New Zealanders and seriously injure an acceptable number to move things around, to say, well, no, we need safety, and we will move people and goods around within that safety envelope. It's not to say that the safe system is about stopping movement of people and goods, because, yeah, sure, we can have a safe system in New Zealand as long as nobody moves anywhere and no goods move anywhere. I mean, that's going to be very safe, but it defies the whole reason for a transport system. So, we want a transport system that operates. And our objective is to ensure that happens in a safe manner. I like the way Ian Cameron, who is a Western Australian actually, but he made this statement on a UN stage. We need a paradigm shift in road safety policy to stop the road death epidemic, and we need it now. It's unrealistic to expect that education and enforcement alone will bring the needed step change. Even road users who know and follow the rules make mistakes. A safe system creates an environment in which simple mistakes will no longer kill people or seriously injure people. Education and enforcement tend to be the go-to for most people in road safety, and we know that they are, elements of what can be done, but they're often the least effective in the way we do them often. I'm not to say that we're going to reduce the amount of that or that it's not important. It just needs to be thought of in its particular way. Let's do a little exercise here, and we'll jump into some infrastructure, and then we'll jump away from it again. But this is a road that was getting a central barrier system job in a narrow flushed median. You can see it there. Just a newly constructed photo here, and you're seeing some of this roll out in New Zealand now, so you'll be quite familiar with it if you're out and about in the regional network. So these narrow flushed medians, flexible barrier system, 2+1 type scenario, which means 2 lanes in one direction, 1 lane in the other, and then you sort of swap that every couple of kilometres to give the overtaking opportunity to the other side of the road. This was a new thing to be done, being done sort of 10 years ago. And this job, without knowing anything about this road, this particular job, I want you to just type into the chat some things that you think were hurdles, blockers to this team that was planning, designing and developing this project to put this central barrier system down the middle of the road. What were the reasons blocking them from doing this? What were the blockers? So pop them into the chat, just any ideas you have, and I'll give a prize. I'll write it. I'm just going to jot a couple down here, and if you happen to match one that I pop down, I'll give you a prize. Not that the ones I'm jotting down are necessarily the biggest challenges. They're just interesting ones that I sort of wanted to pop in there. So I'm seeing a few come in now. I'll give you a second. Okay. Wow. So I'm not wrong in the fact that this group must have either been involved in these jobs in their career or are currently involved in them, or certainly know the issues. I'm seeing some really good comments come in there, and a couple actually that I really like, because they're sort of unpacking why do we sometimes have challenges with these sorts of jobs in a bigger picture sense. So I'll just click through them quickly, and I thank you. Most of you are putting that out, your comments out to everyone, so you can all see what's sort of coming in. I don't need to read through them all. The width was a particularly interesting one. The width of the narrow flushed median especially became an issue. So I'll give Jojo and John a prize there, Kathy, because both talking about width and distribution of the width of that, but also the deflection of that barrier system and the width of the narrow median and how wide to make that became quite a issue. Philippa, on the access to properties, again, that's been one, so another prize there. Sorry, I'm just picking a few here. Everybody could get a prize on this one, but we'll just pick a few. Access to properties is a big one, and the blocking off of some properties and making them go down and turn around at different points, and you can see that. And some of you went with the sort of higher picture challenge on that, public perception and the mindset and those sort of things, which are really, absolutely it in an overarching sense. Politics, absolutely. Yeah, drainage. Yeah, width and cost. Yeah, all wonderful things. And in terms of thinking about what are the challenges with these sorts of projects, and you'll see this a lot. The reason this became, I put this up in this early part of the section, is just there in the 2 minutes I gave you, you came up with a whole lot of reasons why this project is going to be a challenge. And the fact is that we're trying to change, aren't we? We're trying to change the way the road system looks. It's been like the way it has been for a very long time, and we're trying to put changes in that help. And if you undertake a road safety audit on a job like this, or you get a road safety audit done on a job like this, the nature of the report that comes back to you is to identify risks. Risks that this new infrastructure will cause if they're looking at design phase. The auditor does not have any responsibility, and they do not report on the benefits. That's not what they do. And so the nature of us getting road safety audits done on these jobs, they're a very good thing to do, and you should do it and you should look at them, is that they're not going to help you get that job in, right? A safe system assessment, on the other hand, does provide quantification of the benefit of it. There's a bit of subjectivity to it, but it shows you the huge reduction in risk to the travelling public you will get by the installation of this barrier system in the way it's done. And for those who are involved, who have been involved in that is something that is hugely beneficial. So that's going to be a wonderful assistance to us. We need to do stuff that is different to the way we've always been doing stuff out there on the road network in order for us to make significant gains in our road safety objectives. Sometimes it's just we need more money and we need more contractors and we need more resources just to get stuff out there we know works. But sometimes we need to innovate. And road safety audits play an important role in innovation and risk management, but they're not going to help us in that sense of getting things through the way a safe system assessment does. So that's more of the job. That one got hit. Of course it got hit. I mean, some of the blockers were the maintenance people saying, well, it's going to get hit all the time. We have to maintain it. We've got occupational health and safety issues and maintaining it. How do we maintain the pavement next to it? We can't contraflow vehicles. What's happening? These are all things that we need to work through, and we need to come up with ways to address those and ensure that these things can happen safely. And they're very important. However, we need to remember the importance of it. And this one, when it got hit, one of the people involved in the crash called the region to just to say thank you for putting the barrier system, which is pretty rare in our space, isn't it? That somebody just wants to say, hey, thanks for that. It probably saved my life because somebody came directly at me and the barrier was there. Anyway, they created a little video of this. So that's in the learning management system in the little resources section. It's just a 2-minute video, but to me, it's a really powerful one to talk about the way that infrastructure can create this safe system. Because somebody fell asleep, they made a mistake. They left the road, they went straight at another vehicle, and the system stepped in. So the mistake happened, okay? And these are not bad people making these mistakes, right? They've made a poor judgment call in driving after a long weekend or whatever it was. But there's so much of that going on out there that if we can influence the infrastructure, we are in a better position. We need to complement that with trying to minimize people driving in those states, having the vehicles intervene with fatigue warning, having rest areas, having audio tactile, edge and centerline, and everything like that. But the more redundancy we can put into that system, the better. Okay, I'm just going to jump through a couple of other things within here, because you can see there's lots of these different levers in here that we talk about with the infrastructure, the vehicles, work-related safety, road user choices, and things. These are our levers to implement the safe system. So let's talk about the users of the road, because I don't want to give the impression that we're going to ignore road user improvements under a safe system. They are part of the system, and we can continue to do things, and we know what can be beneficial. And I want to quickly jump through a few of these and then talk to you about education, encouragement, enforcement, and then the licensing system, or the way people enter the system. I put graduated licensing systems there, but the licensing. So education, and really not groundbreaking here, that education works best on young road users, the little road users. Kids taking on road safety messages, wonderful, it's great, lasts their lifetime. It can also filter up to parents, and you can instill some pretty good safety messages and culture through the kids up to their parents. Things like, must wear a seatbelt in the car, and sort of parrot that message to their parents and the like. For young road users, it becomes really challenging for us to address this because of, well, some of the biology of humans and the time they're getting licenses, and it's also a very interesting time for young people, lots of exciting things to do, lots of hormones and things going on, and it's all sort of crazy. Young males, especially, risk-taking is part of wired into them at those ages, and these are very challenging times for us. We know some things that work, we know some things that don't work. We know things like advanced driver training doesn't work. In fact, it makes people more likely to be killed or seriously injured, and that's where people are taught to do high speed steering and braking maneuvers and skidding and those sort of things. And it's a bit counterintuitive, because you would think that providing those better skills would make people safer. Probably one of the best road safety research things around the world, this one, it shows that people then come out with overconfidence, they take more risks, and the very small amount of times that they can get out of those risks is absolutely swamped by the increased times they're in those risks and the like. So there are training, sort of more defensive driving, I suppose, style things with a lot of classroom thinking and the like that I wouldn't say that they are groundbreaking in road safety improvement, but they at least are not making things worse. Yeah, getting young drivers into safer vehicles is hugely important, and having some graduated licensing in terms of having restrictions in place as they graduate through the licensing system, and easing them into it. Another sort of, it combines education, encouragement, and the like, is to understand how people perceive road safety and road safety interventions and road safety messages. And the idea that we can talk to a driver or a rider or a pedestrian for that matter, and tell them not to do an activity because they will be involved in a crash. We understand now that that is a fairly useless thing to do. So this is because humans, it's quite complex. I won't go into it, but essentially, take this driver, for example, who in this ad is, texting and driving. And if we were to say to that driver, don't text and drive because you're more likely to be involved in a crash, the driver just goes, I've been texting and driving for years. I haven't had a crash. I'm a good driver. I only text when it's safe to do it. And every time they drive and they text and they don't get killed or seriously injured, it reinforces that that message is wrong. And to a degree, for the individual driver, they're not wrong. I mean, the odds of them being killed or seriously injured by texting and driving are astronomically small. Okay? Now, don't tell people this, but the message we are giving about increasing the risk of being killed or seriously injured is because we look at that at a collective risk level. So we take all of the people texting and driving, we add that up, and it's a significant increase in risk, texting and driving, or not texting and driving, for the collective, the whole public. But at an individual's level, it just doesn't wash. And they are an individual hearing that message. And the same plays out for speed zoning. Oh my gosh, take a road at 100 kilometers an hour, reduce it to 80. And if you tell drivers, the people who use that road, that you're doing it because of their risk of crash, they will never believe you, because they go, I've been driving this road for 40 years. I've never had an issue. It's the idiots. You can't, this is blatant revenue raising and all of that sort of stuff. But if you can connect it to, say, their kids, and this is sort of the beauty of this little ad, is it's basically a message to say, if you text and drive, your kids are going to text and drive. And oh my gosh, now we're onto a resonating hook that we can get people to actually understand and change their behavior. So we need to rethink that and understand that risk profile slightly differently, understand the difference between individual risk and collective risk. Because back to that 80 kilometer per hour, because the person jumping up and down saying, I've been driving this road for 40 years or something, if you just do some statistical analysis of that, they're not wrong. Like, they're not going to be killed or seriously injured. Odds on they won't be. And that's because it's not a speed zone for them. It's a speed zone for everybody and the collective and all of that. And so don't try to talk to an individual about risk. Talk to them about other metrics that are more likely to gain traction. Protection of wildlife is far more effective than it is protection of humans, unless it's kids. Kids trump everything. Protection of kids trumps everything, generally in most things. But reducing a speed limit for the protection of wildlife, there's a couple of studies out there that show that is far more effective than doing it for just road safety purposes, because people sort of accept the animals will just do whatever they're going to do. And so there's that. There's reduction in greenhouse gas emissions. So lower speeds actually is optimal point of travel, and these sort of things. In-pocket expenses, but don't try and peg it back to the individual's risk. So in road safety education, doing it throughout a schooling career is really effective. Combining it with other partner activities such as police or infrastructure investment. So if you're talking about speed and enforcement and all of that, connecting can be a really effective thing. Support for community education. So a lot of very motivated people in the community to improve road safety, often from tragic reasons why they're very much in there. But our role is to really support them with evidence-based initiatives, because if you let them run with whatever they feel would work, sometimes they do really good things. Sometimes they do things from the absolute best place, but we know they don't work. And sometimes they make things worse. Like taking people through a trauma ward, like taking kids through a trauma ward and saying, this is what happens if you don't drive, it just does not work. That's, again, really well researched. Doesn't work. Taking them to the morgue and those sort of things. So we can help by saying, well, that's, we can understand why you think that's going to work, but here are the reasons, and let's try this activity instead. Graduated licensing, I talked about giving restrictions on entry into the system. Education targeting especially motivated groups, so parents being the big one in that, and you can try and look at ways to get parents to invest in safety for their kids, and they're very motivated to do that. Action programs, I'll talk about this a little bit later on. But, don't believe me do believe me. I'm trying to give you the best information, but I've also given you the research and actual pointed you at the papers and the studies in these spaces in a couple of fact sheets in the learning management system. So if you are going down this, you can really delve in and understand the depths of this yourself. So fear tactics generally don't work. Trying to scare people into changing their behaviour in road safety. It sets a nice platform for legislative change. I mean, scare the hell out of the public and then put a law in place. They go, oh, okay, they're doing that because of that. Right, okay. They grumble about it still. Trying to scare people into changing their behaviour, so driving a bit slower because you've put all this major fear, shock and awe style campaigns out there it's effective for the least risk-taking and the safest drivers. And the ones who are going to speed and going to do inappropriate things don't resonate with that whatsoever. Skill-based driver training I've talked about doesn't work. One-off events. Nothing really in the space of driver simulators that we're seeing with evidence base yet. There's some exciting stuff happening, but we need to see that independent, comprehensive evaluation put forward before sort of everybody will jump on board that. But, there's possibility in there. Car racing, driver, go-karting clubs and those sort of things are just almost the same as the skill-based driver training idea. Providing information about, how many people have been killed, what the dangers of the road is, or these sort of things. Again, from an actual change in behaviour perspective, we don't see any difference. From a palatability of regulatory change, it's better and justifies interventions. And just quickly putting this one up, this is New South Wales study on graduated licensing, but it's fairly applicable overall. So in a learner phase with a supervising driver next to the young driver, we see very low numbers of death and serious injury. And this is both by raw numbers, but also by vehicle kilometres travelled. So the actual sort of standardised risk across. As soon as they're out there on their own, the death and serious injury rates just skyrocket. And then they come down over time. They pretty much flatten out after this. But what we discussed, there's a few important things to note about this, but one actually that I like as an interesting takeaway. We pretty much never get back to as safe as somebody with no experience. I mean, isn't that fascinating? Anybody who tells you it's about being, a supercar driver or if everybody could drive like Michael Schumacher, the roads would be completely safe. It's just not true. I mean, you need a basic level of ability to sort of use the road system. Well, actually, you don't need that. I mean, you do. I mean, there's self-imposed risk, management happening back here. But generally, it's not about having super skills. It's about the system and the way it's used. Incentivizing people to drive safely actually can be quite effective. And I think it's an underutilized factor in road safety. Essentially just pay people to be safer in one way or another. You can't actually, it's hard to do it that way, but giving them free license renewals if they have no demerit points or no fines is quite an actually effective mechanism. Advertising that specific behaviour, not just drive safely, but no, take a break every 2 hours or do this specific thing rather than The way we talk to young males especially is very challenging, and they're our primary target market in road safety usually. But comedy seems to be extremely effective in recall for that target audience, actually generally for everybody, and doesn't lead to change in action. It's hard to do these evaluations, but it's pretty impressive. And New Zealand has twigged onto this very much better than almost anybody in the world. Some of your road safety advertising campaigns are just world class. I love them. In fact, we popped a few into the learning management system, which I think are just brilliant, and some others from around around Australia and New Zealand that have some really exciting elements to them. I'm not going to dwell onto that. And there's other ones which are really interesting now, talking about some of the elements and the principles of the SAFE system in different ways. This one, see, the South Australian government stole it from New Zealand. Talking about other people making mistakes, not you, not, we slow down because you could be involved in a crash. Well, it's other people. And that's a better way to start to push out the idea of risk. Talking to the community about biomechanics of injury can be a pretty complex thing to try to do. I like the way the TAC in Victoria has done this. They're utilising Graham here. Graham is a life-size sculpture, which is scarily human-looking. You can just Google Graham road safety and you get a good look at Graham. And Graham's there as the only human that can survive on the roads, and has been developed using understanding of the forces in common crash types, and then creating something that would survive. And it becomes a really powerful tool, especially in that education space. And we work with the TAC on a variety of activities around this. But essentially, year 11 physics, they go in, they look at Graham, they understand, well, it's biology, they understand they can take an iPad and look inside Graham and its structure and these sorts of things. But then it goes into a next phase of, well, how do you redesign the road environment? And there's some really cool interactive stuff where they get to add barriers to the road, slow speed limits down, raise intersections, raise crossings, and Graham transforms back into a normal looking human. And it's really planting that seed in those students to question the speeds we travel and the infrastructure we have on the road system and the way we operate the road system, which is so far out of what humans can tolerate in our current form. Maybe we will evolve in many billions of years to look like Graham if this continues. And enforcement's a great sort of underpinner of road safety. Police are very clear to say we're not the be-all and end-all in road safety. Yes, we often end up being the face of road safety, but the whole system is there. But got to be strategic with that enforcement effort because there's limited resources. There's a lot of work around specific deterrence or general deterrence, as in specific, you get fined somewhere for doing something so you won't do it again, as opposed to general deterrence being that you know that you could be fined for that anywhere, and so you alter your behaviour accordingly. And visual presence is pretty effective, and it's one of the levers we have in a more immediate alteration in trauma. So it is important to be seen and be out there, but it does need to come with covert enforcement as well to give that more general deterrence, instigating more general deterrence. One of the things you might have noticed in some of these slides down the bottom is that we put this little click here for a safe system snippet on this topic. And so in the electronic notes, which you can download from the learning management system, you can go through and you can click on any of those. It'll take you to a little bit more info on it, some pictures, some diagrams, a little video occasionally. So if there's a particular area of interest and it's got one of those, you can go to that. Of course, you can follow Safe System Solutions on LinkedIn and you get those as we put them out weekly or a few times a week often. I'll do one more slide on enforcement, and then Kathy, I'll see if there's any questions or comments that have come in that I need to deal with, and picking along pretty well for time. So enforcement, the technology around enforcement is going to be another sort of game changer around like vehicle technology as well. And we continue to see innovation coming in, mobile phone detection cameras. We've got obviously red light cameras, speed cameras, drug detection, the point-to-point cameras, which is where a photo is taken at one point on the road of the number plate, and way down the road another photo is taken. And yeah, sorry. The average time then of the vehicle over a long period. So you get that speed enforcement over a long time. And in-vehicle enforcement and regulation and thinking is going to be another sort of frontier, I think, where we certainly do see a lot of voluntary stuff happening around speed controls within vehicles and the like, where you can, give your kid a specific key and the car won't go over a certain, can't go over 110 kilometers an hour or whatever, and traction control always stays on, and these sort of things. That's all available optional stuff. We do see some things like alcohol interlocks being enforced. Certainly we could do speed interlocks, no worries. I mean, we can monitor everybody's speed all the time compared to speed zone continuously. And that would be, the technology ain't the issue there. It's the willingness from the public to take this as a serious thing that we need to start doing. Privacy lawyers just go into meltdown when you even mention that sort of stuff. So we've got a bit of work to do there. But yeah, I mean, just to sort of show you that this is 18 years ago with an in-vehicle monitoring device which was my old work vehicle, but it was, it said that's the speed zone you're in. It'd beep if went over the speed, had a central log back in the office. I mean, technology, that's 18 years ago. We had all the speed zoning GIS mapped and you knew where we were. So just our willingness to sort of take these things seriously as a community, because speed is not seen as an issue as much as it should be. Alcohol interlocks seem to be more palatable. I think recidivist high-end speeders are starting to become so unpalatable to the general population that we can start to enforce some of these interlock devices. Now, Kathy, I will pause there, but I'll also give you the opportunity to say anything about and jump back into the learning management system if you didn't cover it while I took my blue screen of death break.
All good, Ken. We did cover off the quiz at the end of the session and where to find everything. And I've been in touch with a few people. So if you aren't getting your login details or you didn't get that email or anything like that, just flick me an email and I'll reset it for you. But we did have a question come through earlier when you were talking about the learner driver versus, not versus the P-plate and so on.
Yeah.
Does driver age or age of getting a license impact the accident rates? Like, for example, in some countries you can get a license at 16 or 18 and that sort of thing. Are there any studies that show anything there?
Yeah, there are, and I can't give you specifics of it, but the general overall is the longer you can push it, the better.
Right.
Like, if we were willing to not license people until they were 25, we would see big road safety benefits. And however, we're not in that space. Actually, I think it maxes out around 27, if I'm remembering these studies right. I can try and dig that out for
I
everybody.
can see you trying to download it in your brain now.
Yeah, because I'm like
earlier for the female gender maybe, and a bit later for the. Sorry.
No, yeah, you're actually right. You're very right there, and it is driven by the development of the male brain, really, basically, and it is around the 27 before it starts to flatten out in terms of all of that.
good question. Thank you. I think we're good. I do have to drop out a few minutes early today, so don't give away any more prizes, but everybody stay tuned and look out for Wallies. And just a reminder to jump in a few minutes early for my awesome trivia.
Thanks, Kathy. And I will keep note of prizes because everybody will leave if there's no chance to win a prize.
Yeah, that's
I will keep note of prizes.
Okay, sorry. Thank you.
All right. I'll see you at the next session.
Thanks.
I will keep ticking along here, and we've got the vehicles, and that was, they provide a wonderful frontier for us to improve safety. We've got all the different safety features coming into the vehicle, which are really exciting. We see star ratings of vehicles and improvements. We're seeing lots of different testing. We're seeing pedestrian testing now as part of the star rating of vehicles, where not only are we trying to protect the occupants of the vehicles, but also the those being struck by the vehicles. So airbags popping out over the bonnet of the car, or pop-up bonnets are now pretty much standard features of new vehicles. So there's exciting stuff, but there are significant limitations in the vehicle currently. Frontal impact, we're seeing quite good stuff. Side impact, as I showed just back here. I mean, the ANCAP test for a side impact of a vehicle is 32 kilometers an hour. So that's saying, for a 5-star vehicle for side impact, if you crash into a pole or a tree at under 32 kilometers an hour, we're pretty confident you won't get an acquired brain injury or be killed. Above that, yeah, probably unsure, and up higher than that, you're probably going to get an acquired brain injury and killed, or the driver. So you can see just the lack of ability in the physics to absorb those forces at a point source on the side of the vehicle is pretty significant. So we do have a lot of work to do in that space. And we had that wonderful question before around, these sorts of vehicles. When do we get that human out of the system? No steering wheel. You just sit there. Your car takes you where you need to go, and then goes and parks itself or does whatever it's. And it's a wonderfully exciting, changing world. And we know there's levels of automation where we say, this would be a level 4 or 5 autonomous vehicle because the driver is not in control. The difference between level 4 and 5 is essentially a level 5 can go anywhere, and a level 4 is geofenced to specific areas or roads or the like. So, if you see an autonomous shuttle putting up and down the waterfront or something like that without a driver, it's very much a level 4 vehicle. Early level 4, because it doesn't go very fast, and it's often got people monitoring it in the background and these sort of things. But this is quite a long way off. Okay, we're going to see it filtering in with different elements of it here and there and things, but there's a lot of monitoring going on about where you do your investment in road safety and how long can we wait for this. Can we just do nothing in infrastructure? Because we'd save a lot of money and just maybe pump it into incentivizing more of this. And all those, people are constantly studying, monitoring investment. Is this the best thing to do? And, very much for the next 20, 30 years, investment in infrastructure, in vehicles, in enforcement and education and stuff in that mix is still the way to go. And we know that these vehicles get better and they start to brake by themselves, even with drivers where the vehicle takes over. So we're going to see these improvements. And we see that, occasionally they might still crash, but if they've started their braking early and said, oh, well, this driver ain't awake and we're going to hit something now, I'm going to slow it down, then we're going to get it within tolerable levels, hopefully. So we're going to see significant improvements. And speed is so important in road safety. I only have a couple of slides on speed because I could do a couple of days on speed and speed management. But just very briefly to remind you here that speed is not a linear relationship with, well, a whole lot of things. But have a look here. 60 kilometers an hour, 45 meters out, somebody steps out, you're going to touch them because you need to, well, the driver reacts and then they brake. Let's go up 10 kilometers an hour to 70. Well, they hit them at 46 kilometers an hour, not just 10 kilometers per hour. So it's not a linear relationship. In fact, we know that it is a power relationship, and it's a fourth power relationship for fatal, and a third power relationship for serious injuries. So if you cast your mind back to your maths, so this means that small changes in speed have significant changes in fatal crash outcomes, significant with serious injury, not quite as significant as fatal, and it comes sort of down with that. But if we can make changes to speed, we're going to get our biggest benefit in reduction in fatals, reduction in serious injuries, and other injuries. So it's really hugely powerful for us to manage speed. The community just is so invested in speed when it comes to speed limits, though, aren't they? And they, you know, I've got in here some research which I'm always fascinated by communities' insights into speed limits. I used to manage speed limits for Victoria for quite a few years, and I'd constantly be monitoring public sentiment on speed limits and what they think and how you different message things and try and, you know, delve into that. So anybody who's working in that space, I can point you at some really fascinating stuff. But people don't think, well, half the population doesn't think that reducing speed limits would reduce crashes. Now, this tends to be the same across most jurisdictions. You know, you get a bit of variance, but females are better than males in this one, definitely, understanding that. But they can understand basic physics, usually, that the severity of crash will come down with lower speeds. So that's interesting. And when I was updating the Austra's Guide to Road Safety Part 3, which is speed and speed management, speed limits, speed management, I popped this diagram in just as a reminder that no matter what vehicles you've got and what road you've got and what road users you've got, if you filter it through an appropriate speed, you have a safe road transport system. Now, that's easy to draw a diagram of. It's very hard to do in practical reality, but it's a reminder that that's that amazingly important thing within our road safety space. But don't think that it's just speed limits. The infrastructure, as many of you know, can be a wonderful tool in managing speed. Getting people to drive at appropriate speeds because they want to is far better than us putting a red circle around a black number and telling them to drive at that. They get really angry at that. But if they decide because there's a raised intersection or a roundabout or a speed hump or traffic calming there to go slower, they don't make that connection to government intervention in speed management. It's their choice. So that's far more effective if you can do it. It often costs a lot more. Explaining why speed limits are in place can increase acceptance and compliance. And generally, the protection of vulnerable road users is well accepted, especially in urban areas. So that can be a lever for us to get more compliance and acceptance. I'll jump on from that. It's super complicated, and we'll delve into it more, but speed and the management of speed so critical in our road safety. I've got mountains of reports and research and papers and different trials and things that have happened out there. So as I say, I'm happy to share and talk further to anybody on that. But risk has traditionally, in fact, always been talked about as the chance of something happening and how bad it's going to be. That's financial risk, environmental risk,